So tonight, we're going to continue with our program of what we're calling, and it took us 7 meetings to arrange this name, Fireside Tales. So we've all, by the look of the demographic in this group, we've all sat around dinner tables in front of the crackling fire, more likely at bar stools, and talked about the way things used to be in Squaw Valley. And then chances are, someone said along the way, somebody should write this down. So this is our attempt to kind of capture an oral history of Squaw Valley, introducing some really interesting and frankly important people to come up and talk to us tonight. So just to set the mood or set the tone a little bit, you know, we've all looked at these pictures of old Squaw Valley, right? Guys and girls in black and white photographs and stretch pants, long thongs, wooden skis, skiing in college leather sweaters, right? And then if you're like me, all of a sudden there's this epiphany, wait a minute, I'm one of those guys now. Only the photographs we're going to be looking at not long from now are going to be Hexel swallowtails, pink and purple day glow onesies, and Tamara? Girls with hair that looks like it's on fire, and guys with mustaches that make them look like 70s porn stars, right? The 1970s. So tonight, we've got 3 guests, and I'm going to let the first of our guests introduce the other 2. We have no idea what they're going to talk about, because any great story should be a story that the storyteller wants to tell in the way that they want to tell it. So we're going to start this and maybe interrupt a little bit for dinner. We haven't worked that out yet. Raise your hand if you get hungry and want to eat. So in the meantime, I'd like to ask John Walsh if you'd come up and kind of introduce the evening for us. You know what this sign means, John?
So, don't stress me out. All right, how's everybody doing tonight? So, if anything goes wrong tonight, it's all Mike's fault. Gave me no heads up. Didn't prepare for this. This is all just off the cuff. No, I'm serious. This poor guy has worked me, but in turn I stressed him out because I wanted to check his Buddha breathing to make sure it works. So my name's John Walsh. He came to me just looking at what it was like to grow up in the valley, and to try and get the ball rolling, I tried to cover a few decades and think of some people that grew up here, 60s, 70s, 80s. I got Debbie, she grew up here starting in the 40s. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway. It's amazing. It's the water out of the creek that she skinny dipped in. So, anyway, a couple people came into mind. One of them pussed out, Tony Stontiner. So anytime you see Tony Stontiner, even though he's tall, big, and he makes really nice wrought iron things, he's really a wuss. He did not want to come up. So I kicked him out, invited his sister, Dr. Heidi Stontiner. And that feels good to say, because you look around this valley, you look at the meadow, you look at the whole, our backyard, and you're like, how did any of these kids get out of here, make it through high school? So not only did some of us make it through high school, we have doctor in front of our names, we have engineers, we have Harvard grads, we've got Sierra College grads, we've got it all. So Squaw Valley was very unique in that in the 60s and 70s and in the early 80s, before things really started shifting, like anyone in anyone's neighborhood, is I think that if there was project-based learning, it was called Squaw Valley. And so I invited Heidi Stontiner. I'm going to have her come up. She's going to give you a great discussion. So Heidi was born in?
Truckee.
No. Heidi was born in Truckee. She is the youngest of the Stontiner family, which again is a great answer. And Kate was also born in Truckee. I was born in Reno because my mother thought I was gifted, and I think Joan Klaussen was saying something about my cord being wrapped around my neck 4 times, and that Truckee couldn't deliver me. And actually, because my mom and dad got married by gunpoint down at the wedding bells down in First Street, because I'm a bastard child from the Five Circles Club. Or Bar 1, whichever one my dad was the bartender at the time, and Betty was down at the Five Circles Club. Anyway, so I had to be born in Reno, but I was actually brought home quickly. But Heidi was born in Truckee. She's the youngest of the Stantiner family, which came in from Sault Ste. Marie when her dad walked across the bridge from Sault Ste. Marie, Canada to Sault Ste. Marie, America. As an Austrian ski instructor, he made it out here. Not sure how, but we're very lucky that he did that. And the other person, so she'll come up, is I have Kaitlin Klaussen. Now, the Klaussen family is littered throughout the whole valley in the sense that her father is the one that designed every chairlift in Alpine. Kind of good history, amazing history. Kaitlin was also born in Truckee a little before I was born in Reno, so that's the decade before me, before Heidi was born in Truckee. We won't get into years. Debbie was born in San Jose a few decades before, and so at this point in juncture, I'm going to go last because Mike's worried that I'm going to take the whole hour up myself. I have some props that I'll show too that can be handed around, because one of the questions and concerns I have is that you guys have the ability. I understand the fight that you guys have done with who, we won't mention any names, KSL. So I appreciate that. I mean, I don't live here now. I live in Tahoe City. I feel it. I understand it. It's something that when you do grow up here, you're born and raised, and you've seen all the love and the joy and the excitement and the beauty and the energy that the vortex that this valley creates, it's wonderful. I sure hope that someday that some of the things I have here today I can put into a museum that you guys create, a history of Squaw Valley, one that you guys can tell the story from your standpoint, from our standpoint, that will eventually 2-3 generations down the road have a story that isn't made up, that isn't bought, that isn't corporatized, if that's a word. So I appreciate everything you guys do. It's amazing. Even though we're not in the valley, we still feel it every day. It's part of our blood. Kaitlin coaches at Squaw Valley. I've coached at Squaw Valley for 17 years. I love this place. It's in my heart. It's in my blood. You guys are keeping that flame, for a better word, going, and I think that I appreciate that. And so when Mike asked me to do this, as hesitant as he was, it's not his fault, it's my fault if anything goes wrong tonight. I appreciate it, and I enjoy the fact that we're able to get into the Polson's house, because they never let me in here. Because I was always the one that told on Russell when he would try to start fires everywhere around the valley. So Sandy didn't believe me until the sheep herders camp went up in flames, but that was Glenn. So Russell wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed, because when Glenn lit the thing on fire, Russell ran through the meadow. So all the mothers got on their decks and went, "There's Russell. Yep, that son of a bitch. He's lit another one." Well, Glenn's smarter. I mean, look what he's done. Glenn went up and hid behind a tree. So Russell was running home screaming like a girl. He got nailed. It was like for years. I think it was on Sandy's 80th birthday that Russell finally fessed up and went, "It wasn't me, it was my brother." And Glenn's over there going, "No, no." So anyway, that's why I never got in the house. So it was pretty sweet in here. So thank you for inviting me. So Kaitlin, come on up. I'm going to have Kaitlin speak first. She's ready to go. And again, Kaitlin Klaussen, everybody.
I have to try out the microphone here. All right, close to my mouth, right? All right, I had to bring some notes because I thought you might want some dates. I'm not a person that remembers the dates of things, so I had to write a cheat sheet. So my name is Kate Klaussen, also known as Katie, and Kaitlin. So all those names I still get called and use. My mother is Joan Klaussen, that many know as the nurse of Squaw Valley. And my dad was Peter Klaussen, also the mountain manager guy. So now my mother, as she's getting older, she's 84 and starting to forget things. As we drive in the valley, she asks me, "How did we get to Squaw Valley? How did I end up living here? Why do I live here now?" And I had to look it up. I said, "How did we get here?" Yes, how did we get here? Well, my father, Peter Klaussen, he grew up in upstate New York, and he was being groomed for a very corporate executive life. And he somehow became, he did get to go on summer campouts to canoe trips, and he loved the outdoors a great deal. And he also then, during World War II, became a pilot, as many people did, and he loved the adventure. And as a pilot, he would fly over the Sierras often, and he absolutely loved the Sierras. So when he finally decided to come west and check it out, he came to Squaw Valley for when the Olympics were going to come here. He came to check it out, and he absolutely fell in love with Squaw Valley, and of course KT-22, as many people did. So then he decided he was going to buy some property and build a cabin. Because the Olympics were coming, he was going to make a killing. So he comes skiing one time, and he goes to the restroom and happens to run into the restroom into his old roommate, Henrik Bull, who's now an architect, and they used to go to Stowe, Vermont, and go skiing. And they would go and stay in these cute cabins. So my dad says, "Hey, Henrik, will you help me design a cabin that I'm going to build myself?" And Henrik looks at him and thinks, "Oh my God, he's never built anything. He's not a contractor. He doesn't know how to build. I'm going to make something really simple." So he makes this nice, simple box and shows the plans to my dad. And my dad says, "That's really boring. I'm not going to build that." So what he does is he takes the roof, Henrik goes and takes the roof and turns it sideways and makes a really interesting cabin. And that became the Chisholm House later. That's known as the Chisholm House, the one that's I'll have to pass it around, the little, that's now gone.
Yeah.
Does somebody here own that house now?
What road was that on?
On Lanning.
Oh, Lanning.
Yeah.
Debbie, you want to pass it around? Oh, sure.
Yeah, pass it around. So thank goodness Tom Kelly gave me this little calendar, because that has a lot of dates on it. So my dad's building this house, and he actually lived in San Francisco or someplace I don't even know where he lived. But my mother was set up by the landlord to meet Peter Klaussen because she wanted to come check out this cabin in Squaw Valley, and she wanted an invitation to come and see this cabin in Squaw Valley. So the landlady set them up, and sure enough, they end up moving to Squaw Valley, building this cabin, and have been here ever since. But not just in that one house, though. When I started adding up, I discovered that I knew that my dad built a bunch of houses, and one of the big reasons was they built this Chisholm House. I mean, it's now the Chisholm House, but he builds this cabin in 1956. Actually, I think it was built in 57. So then somebody drives down the road, gets out of their car, and says, "I'll buy it." And they offer him twice as much money as they thought it was possible. So he sells it right there on the spot. And then he goes to build another house. And so the Olympics are coming, and they build a house up on Apache Court. And that's the one that the Halls own now, that's below Tamara McKinney's house up on Apache. And it has maybe 100 feet down the street to the house. There's a trail and stairs. There's no walkway down there. And the house is hanging over and looks up to the tram face and KT. So it has a gorgeous view of KT. Not a practical house at all, though, in the winter, because it's a steep, steep hill going up, and there's a long way down to bring your groceries. And what amazes me is that people, they thought that was fun. They thought that was enjoyable. So that's the house when I was born. My parents actually lived on a houseboat in Sausalito. That was supposed to be where they really lived. But they spent a great deal of time up here building houses. And when I was born, by mistake, during the summer, just a little bit early, so they had to rush to to Truckee, and that there was no doctors or there was a doctor, but there were no other nurses in the hospital. So my mother became the nurse in the hospital there and started working there. So one of the things that happened in our life is that we grew up. So the house on Apache was down below the Hall's house, where Oakley and Barbara Hall lived, and so they met Oakley and Barbara Hall. And they were very unusual people. Oakley was a novelist, a writer, a literary guy, and they were also really artistic. They would read plays, and my parents would spend a huge amount of time up at their house talking about literature and writing and art and architecture and things like that. So, and then in Squaw Valley, there were many, many people who were well-educated and loved, good conversation and a good party. So many a good party was put on by the Halls and Joan Klaussen. So the sort of thing that would happen was, when I was growing up, I was a little kid, and we're hanging out at the Hall's house all the time, and there's all this talk about literature, and they use really big words, and they're always talking about books, and their kids, if they wanted to go to a movie, they had to first read the book and write a book report. And then they were allowed to go see the movie. So when I was thinking back about what I really, really remember about growing up in Squaw Valley, I really remember these great big winters where we had tons of snow. And then when I was in high school were the drought years, the 76, 77, when we had the terrible droughts that were just like the last few years that we've had. And for a while I began to wonder, did we really have those big winters, or was I just really short? And the snow seemed so deep. Well, then we had a winter, when I was in college, the winter of 82, 83, where we had the big avalanche in Alpine. And that's when I realized, we really did have those big winters. It was really true. So the big winters I remember of 1967 and 68 and 69, those are the years I really remember, because I was probably 7, 8, 9 years old, and we then lived. So now I figured out, after I did all this research, that we lived in 8 different houses by the time I was 7 years old. So to me, the smell of sawdust, the sound of saws, the sound of hammers, to me that sounds like home. And all I needed was a pillow and a blanket, and that's where home was. And I just brought those with me because we were always under construction and building a new home. And then selling that one, building another one. And so that's how my dad made most of his money, was just build a house, sell it. So my dad went to Harvard Business School. He did not want to sit still behind a desk for anything. He wished he was an architect, and he really, so that's why he really got into those projects. He absolutely loved the construction of a house and working with an architect and doing some of the designing himself with an architect to back him up. So during those big winters, though, the thing I remember is that we only had two-wheel drive cars. We didn't have four-wheel drive cars. We spent a lot of time going down by the post office, backing up, getting as fast as we could go, driving up the road, not making it, having to go back down. We lived on Paiute then, where Liz Mercer's house is now. That was our house during those years. Down, back up again, up the road. Oh, we didn't make it, back down again. And then after a while, you'd give up and park down by the post office. And actually, that was Bob Dalbon's. That was the Dalbon Grocery. The Dalbon Grocery Store. We would park down there and then trudge up the hill with the groceries to the house. And then one of the winters, so during that time, also, it would snow so much and the power would go out. And unlike today, they don't get it back on in a couple hours. There were a few times when the power was out for 3 or 4 days. And one time it was out for an entire week. And our house had a gas stove, so we could cook. And before you knew it, we had 3 families staying over at our house so that they could cook food. And for us, that was such a fun time. There was nothing, you didn't have to worry about anything. There was no school. There was no going anywhere. We weren't going to the store. You just had to relax and play games.
Flip off
and
the deck.
And then, yes, and then we had enough snow that you could jump off the deck or off the roof. And we really did that. We jumped off the deck, and our boots would get stuck down in the snow, and then we'd try to get out, and your boot would be stuck, and if somebody would have to come and dig the boot out. And we really did jump off the decks. That was just the funnest thing. And then the other thing that I realized, that when we talk about people having cabin fever, boy, you really got cabin fever. There you were, stuck in your house with just your family and your brothers and your sisters, and you're fighting, and you've run out of good food, and so you had to go and find the neighbors and find out what they were up to, and did they have anything to eat, and were they playing a better game than you had. And sometimes that's how we met the neighbors that maybe were second homeowners that we didn't really know. Is we'd be out there saying, "Hello, what are you doing over there?" And then we'd go over there and find out what they were up to. And people would have to get together to see who had the four-wheel drive and who was going to go into town to get a load of groceries, and would you make it back? That was very, exciting. So to me, that was a huge memory. And then now I'm kind of sad when the power comes on so fast. It only takes them a couple hours now to get the power back on. So the other thing that we used to do was that, the old story about how you had to walk a mile in the bus stop in the snow. Well, for us, we lived up the hill, so we could walk down the hill to the bus stop. So the bus stop was here at Dalbon's Grocery, and but we would have to pack out the trail if it snowed a lot, so that we didn't want to walk all the way around on the road. So remember when we used to have to boot pack the hill to have a course? You had to boot pack because there weren't groomers out there that groomed the whole hill for you. So we would boot pack trails. We would spend the afternoon stomping sideways like this, packing out trails so that we could get down to the bus stop. And to me, that was really fun. I would spend hours out there packing out trails. And then one time, we were going from Paiute down, and there's the house with the I don't even know what we call it. The one that whose house is that? That comes. There's a part that comes out. What is that?
I don't know the name.
On the corner of Lanny and Christie.
Still there.
So we would make a trail out behind that, and then one time I remember that as we were making the trail down, we were kind of setting off tiny avalanches as we were making the trail down the hill, and then we learned how to kind of ride the little avalanche down the hill, and then pretty soon we were, boogie boarding the little avalanches down the hill to make our trails, and that was a really amazing memory. So the other thing is that growing up next to the halls is that in that winter or the summer of 1969 is when the halls started the community of writers. And so I don't know exactly how it got started, except that in my memory it was Oakley Hall really wanted to be able to play tennis with some friends that could carry on great conversations and talk about books. So they started it with, there was Barnaby Conrad, there was Blair Fuller, Jack Leggett, the Perlman, was first name Perlman, the dad. David Perlman, who still is a science writer for the Chronicle. And so they started this writers conference, and the way it was for us is that my mom and Barbara Hall were the secretaries of it, and us kids we would staple manuscripts, and we would collate manuscripts, and then we would run errands, and we would make sandwiches. And in the meantime, we were meeting all these writers who were always talking about super interesting things, and many of them were musicians and artists, and it brought in the summertime a different crowd of people that we would meet during the winter. And so the thing that I noticed was that here was those people who could talk, they could tell great stories, they were great storytellers, and but they were, a lot of them were had very, very little common sense. There were people who couldn't figure out how to work lamps and light bulbs, or how to fix things, so we were constantly having to rescue people in their houses from silly things. But they were just amazing people to be around. And so many of the people also were encouraging the local kids to go to college, to get a better education, to be sure that they skied a lot, but they got out and got around the world and traveled and enjoyed themselves. And so those are my big memories of Squaw Valley during the 60s. Thank you very much.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
I heard, God knows how many third, fourth, fifth hand, that your father Peter was the one who put up the blue markers or blazes up Shirley Canyon. Is that so?
Oh, you want to know the story about that?
Yes.
So, he did not put up the blue blazes, but he did put up, so I remember at one time him showing me he would make lichen colored blazes. And so I remember him showing me, saying, look, the trails are all getting completely ruined. There are people going every which way, and people are getting lost. We need to mark it in some way. So he put some green and orange blazes that looked like lichen. But I remember thinking, well, if you can't follow a trail, how are you going to follow lichen-colored blazes? But so he didn't do the blue, but he did want to mark the trail.
Kaitlin,
Yes.
what about summers in Squaw Valley when you were growing up?
Oh, summers in Squaw Valley. Yeah, oh
How big
yes.
was the creek?
Yeah. So on my 5th birthday, I was born in July. My 5th birthday has a picture of Bob Van Wetter, Kimball Pier, Tiger and Chipper Atwater, and Mandy Ballinger. And we were all naked in the creek. We spent a lot of time in the creek. So for us, the summers, we spent outside almost all the time. So we would leave our house, put a towel around our neck, wear our bathing suit, and ride our Stingray bikes down to the Squaw Valley Lodge and spend our days by the pool and hiking up the canyon over and over and over again. I think we spent more time hiking up the canyon and going out in the creek and following the creek and rafting down the creek and fishing and, just cruising around, discovering things out there. And the thing I think about Shirley Canyon is that that's where we went for picnics, parties. That's where we went if you wanted to meet a boy. That's where we went if you wanted to get away from everybody. That's where we went if you wanted to go skinny dipping. That's where we went if you were mad and needed some time to yourself. That Shirley Canyon was where we went. And that it is so beautiful up there, and that we're so grateful to have that here in Squaw Valley, and that many people that live here even don't really take advantage of it. But nowadays, if you go up on a Saturday to your favorite spot, there are about 100 people that come by you. But it would be nice to have trails that you could find.
It'll be nice if you have all those condos up there.
I was curious if you remember about the restaurant that they had at the top of KT briefly for a while.
So I don't remember it, but I do. My mother also keeps. That's one thing that she keeps remembering over and over again. Every time she drives in here, she says, "What happened to my Cornish restaurant?" And I have to tell her, "Well, it's not there anymore." So I always thought that my dad owned that restaurant. I thought it was his building, and I find out it was John Riley's building. He was the one who kind of helped build it. But so the Cornish restaurant was the Cornish was the house to have the TV cameras during the Olympics, and also that John Riley wanted it as a place to show off the potential at Alpine Meadows. So they would ride up the KT lift during the summer and then go up to the Cornice and then look around, and he wanted people to invest in Alpine Meadows. And then after the Olympics, that was after the Olympics, they turned it into a restaurant, and my mother she wanted to have the best hamburger ever. She called them Jarl Burger hamburgers or something. So she imported this really expensive buns and had best meat, and it was like the beginning of like a fancy food on the mountain. It cost her more than she made, I'm sure. And she would make soup. She would mix together different Campbell soups and then call it something else. And supposedly a Campbell guy came by and said, "What's this soup? Who made this soup? It's really great." And she mixed 3 Campbell soups together or something like that. But she thinks then I think it only lasted for a couple years before it caught on fire. There was a German guy who ran it after, and then it caught on fire.
Where was Russell?
He wasn't born yet. Not Russell wasn't born yet. All right. I think it's.
Okay.
Yeah.